Hello, everyone, and welcome to Stress Free IEP, the show where we help families build their village so they can raise their neurodivergent children with confidence, clarity, and support. I'm your host, Frances Schefter, special education attorney, advocate, and fellow parent walking this journey with you. Whether you're joining us live on Facebook or YouTube or listening later on your favorite podcast app, we're so glad you're here. Let's meet today's amazing guest. Amy Orlando is a certified applied neuroscience. So she's BAMSOTR/L cert and applied neuroscience, those are all of her after her name. And she's an occupational therapist and executive functioning coach with 15 plus years of experience supporting neurodivergent individuals in school, work, and daily life. She founded AEO Coaching, a virtual practice serving adults in the DMV area. Amy combines occupational therapy, neuroscience, and practical strategies to help clients understand their brains, build follow-through skills, and manage responsibilities and goals more independently. Sorry, Amy, I totally botched that introduction.
That's okay.
So talk to me about where, I guess, what are all of those names behind you? The codes behind your name?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yep. So I graduated with a degree in occupational therapy, right? So I have a Bachelor of Arts, Master's of Science in Occupational Therapy, and then a certificate in applied neuroscience. And I use my OT lens and applied neuroscience to help individuals really understand their brain, right? So they understand why they're able to do tasks and why they aren't able to do other ones. Because at the end of the day, if you can understand your brain, then you can adapt strategies and you can go, oh, this one works for me or this one doesn't. And you can adapt. So it really comes down to understanding your brain first, and then you can use strategies that fit your brain.
Which totally makes sense. And when you talk to a lot of adults that have later in life diagnoses of, autism or ADHD and all of that, it's things connect. Because now all of a sudden, right, they understand and they get it oh.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because all of our brains work differently. And if we understand, this is just who I am and this is the way it is, it makes life a lot easier.
Right? No, definitely. Yeah. And a lot of individuals I work with, especially adults, later in life diagnoses or just adults in general, they're using the strategies that work for them already. It's just a matter of understanding and putting a kind of a mirror up to, oh yeah, no, this really works when I do this. Or if I use it in this context, oh, maybe try it in that context. So some of it's about reinventing the wheel, but a lot of it is about just understanding your patterns of behavior and then the neuroscience behind it, so it really sticks as to why something is successful or not.
Right, which makes sense. And I love you mentioned about procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
And people are always, it's such a big topic, especially with our neurodiverse kids, right?
Yep.
Because it's why don't they just get up and do it? Just do it, try harder.
Yep.
So what's your philosophy on what to do when the procrastination is taking over?
Absolutely. So it's not about trying harder, right? That's a typical thing. I just need to try harder. I just need to do it. And it's actually about understanding what's happening in the brain and adjusting your strategies so that you're able to get the things done you want to get done, right? If you say, oh, I'm just going to try harder, or I should be able to do this, then the shame comes in, and then you just keep kind of procrastinating, and then you feel bad, and it's just kind of a vicious cycle. So when talking about procrastination, the biggest thing we have to talk about first is dopamine in the brain. Right, so dopamine is the neurochemical that tells your brain, hey, this is important, I need to do this thing, right? So once we understand dopamine, we can understand a little bit more about procrastination. So there's kind of two reasons why people procrastinate. One side is something's boring, right? I have to do this report. I have to do homework. I don't want to do it. It's boring, right? Then you have the other side, which the task is too big, right? I have to clean the kitchen. Like you're like, no, like that's too big, right? So there's kind of two different buckets of why people procrastinate. And it comes back down to, again, understanding how dopamine interacts in the brain.
Yeah. It's just, and it's so true because I think about like times that I procrastinated. And for me, it was a lot like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know where to start. Is
Yeah.
a big thing for me. And
Yeah.
it's like, I need to remind myself, start at the beginning, like
Yeah.
just, right?
Exactly. So if we go off of that example, right, what's happening in the brain neurochemically is that if there is something that, so our brain is designed to predict what's going to happen next, right? So if we anticipate success, our brain actually gets a shot of dopamine and we go, oh yeah, I can do that thing, no problem. If it's something that's too big, our brains predict failure, and our brain, and then we go, no, can't do that, right? So breaking something down is really, really helpful. Breaking it down to such a small point that you're like, oh yeah, I can do that, right? Like I can start with the dishes, or sometimes it's just even getting up or logging onto the computer. But the smaller you break something down, the more likely you're going to get that shot of dopamine, and your brain's going to predict success, which allows you to be able to do that thing.
That makes so much sense. My uncle used to say all the time about going to the gym and working out that 99% of it is just putting on the gym clothes and driving to the gym. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because once you're there, like,
once you're there, it's fine. Yeah. And it's so true, right? And it's setting yourself up for success, right? To make those things easier to do, right? The gym clothes are out or whatever it is. And then therefore it's just easier to kind of put the gym clothes on, get to the gym. But it's all about breaking it down into really, really small parts.
Right. And one of the other coaches on Girls on the Run, because we do practice on Friday mornings in addition to Monday afternoon, but Friday morning is at like 7:30 in the morning. So it's really early for our elementary school kids. And she says, yeah, well, my daughter just goes to sleep in her running clothes.
Perfect.
So literally wakes up and gets out, so it's not like literally like she has to roll out of bed and get into the car.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's just looking at your life and trying to figure out kind of, again, how do you break something down, or how do you make it easier for yourself? Like those little resistance points, right? Do you sleep in your clothes? For me, I know from drinking water is a huge barrier, right? I'm just not good at it, right? So I like to use like a water bottle with a straw because it's easier than like unscrewing the water bottle, right? But all these little things, there you go, right? That make it easier for our brains to be able to do the thing, versus having all these resistance points. There's just more likely spots of, roadblocks where our brain goes, nope, can't do it. I'm going to opt out.
Right. My daughter has one of the ones that has like the 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m. mark. So like she knows she should be drinking this.
Yeah.
Because for her, it's a challenge. Can I drink it all by the time I'm supposed to? And what works for her.
For sure.
Yeah. And it's so like, I love hearing that about the procrastination because so many people do it and don't understand why. Mm-hmm. Like it's just do it. Like for my daughter in the mornings of getting dressed and getting to school, it makes me crazy. My husband and I are the type of like, if you need to leave at 8:00, we're ready at 7:45. My daughter is the type, if we need to leave at 8:00, 7:55, she'll start getting dressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, why? Just do it. And it's such a challenge. But now it like makes sense. I'm like, let's figure out what it is that's causing that so that we can figure out a way to stop it.
Yeah. The other part of it, especially when you're thinking about parents or, kind of, interacting with your kids and stuff, is be curious about it, right? Is a lot of times, parents tend to go into the conversations knowing why it's hard for a kid to get started or whatever it is, as opposed to getting curious with the kid of like, oh, okay, like I notice, X, Y, Z is happening. What's hard about that, or what's going well, right? So you kind of have both sides of it, because it's amazing what, you can learn from just like talking to your kid and being like, oh, like to me, that wasn't a barrier at all, but for you, it is. Okay. right? And then you can kind of problem solve at that level versus kind of assuming sometimes that you kind of know what's getting in the way.
That makes so much sense because it also puts the responsibility back on them,
Yeah,
rather than us making that demand,
yeah,
which for some of our kids making a demand is like they're just going to automatically fight against it because you're telling them to do something.
yeah,
Um, Whereas, like, let's figure out, I wonder what would happen if we tried this or tried
yeah.
that.
And in addition, like, right, like the moment you're curious too, and you help your kid identify strategies that work for them, now they're going to take ownership of those strategies.
Right.
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 And the moment they can take ownership of the strategies, like it's theirs, right? Like even if it's your idea, like if you ask them and they come up with the same idea, it's all of a sudden their idea. Now they take it and run with it.
Right. Exactly. It's so interesting because it just brought up a memory of mine of like how our brains work differently. And my husband and I were driving somewhere, and I always drive because I get motion sickness, and he doesn't care because he doesn't like to drive. But he was like, I was trying to figure out which way we were supposed to go. I have no sense of direction. My husband's like amazing with the sense of direction. Like, drop him somewhere and he can figure out how to get home, like in the middle of the woods. Like, but he's not good at the looking at the map and being like, oh, you need to veer right here, and
Yeah,
that instant quick thinking. And it
yeah,
used to get me so mad at him of like, why can't you just tell me if it's left or right? Because to me, like, that's just a simple thing in the direction, look at the map. But then I had to take that step back and like, that's easy for my brain, but not for his brain,
yeah,
and that I need to stop judging him on how my brain works and
yeah,
accept how his brain works and find that happy medium.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, number one thing, whether it's, a spouse, right? Parents, friendships, right? Just as kind of being curious, right? As to what the other person sees, what their brain is experiencing, even my coaching practice, right? Like that's the number one thing I do, right? Is that I get curious, right? Because I'm not the expert in their lives. They're the experts in their life, right? And I need to know how they're experiencing things so we can individualize strategies that work for them, right? Because I can suggest strategies all day long and we can talk about them, but unless it fits with what they're experiencing and what they think would be successful, it's not going to be helpful.
Which is so interesting because it's bringing me like linking it to the IEPs and stuff of like how, one of the supplementary aids we always have is break down the tasks and assignments to, individual, which for our younger kids, yeah, because they're not there yet. But I'm just thinking about how we can tweak that for our older kids is the teacher will work with the child to do that. So to teach them how to do it and what works for them.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I always do with clarify location and manner is like, is this the type of child that you break down the assignment into the 5 parts and you give them the checklist of the 5 parts?
Mm-hmm.
Or is this the type of child that you break down the assignments into 5 parts and you say to the child, there's going to be 5 steps. Here's step 1. When you finish this, I'll give you step 2. Both are perfectly acceptable, but different brains react to it differently.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Right. And yeah, and a lot of that, if you talk to the child, right, or the young adult or whoever, and ask them I can use the same idea with my adults that I work with, right? Like some want to break down the entire task that works for them, and then some just the executive functioning of breaking it down or seeing I have 20 things on my to-do list is way too long. They want to start with the task. And then once they do step 1, they can do step 2, right? But you're like, to your point, it's different brains and there's no one size fits all approach. And if we do it as a one size fits all approach, A, that might not work for somebody, but B, we're not helping young adults or whoever really understand what works for them, which is
Right.
what we need, right? We need people to understand what works for them because life is going to change, right? There's going to be transitions, there's going to be different life events that uproot your routines and your habits. But if you know what works for you, then you can get back to the routines and habits that work for you.
Right. And figuring it out on your own and developing that independence.
Yeah.
because, clearly when we're younger, we need people to guide us more, but we also then need them to teach us how to do it. Um,
Hmm.
because I know I've seen that a lot. Like we have the IEPs with all this support, which is great and they need it. But then as the kids get older, if we still have that same amount of support, when they get to college, they fall apart because they've never had to do it on their own or make the plan on their own. And so it's kind of an important thing with transition and the transition plan parts of the IEPs is like, what are we doing to bring to that independence? How do we understand our brains? What do we need to do? Um,
Yeah.
and because that is such an important part that people often neglect is that the IEP is to help transition you to adulthood also. It doesn't, yes, it ends when you graduate high school, but it's not only supposed to, okay, once you graduate high school, that's all you have to learn. Like it's
Yeah.
supposed to give
For
you
sure.
that next step.
Yeah. And I primarily work with adults, but I also work with high school and college kids, sometimes middle school, depends. But a big part of my work is helping them look at their IEP or at least look at, if not their IEP, look at strategies. And again, put a critical lens to this. Like, okay, you have extended time. Well, why does extended time work for you? Um, how do you advocate for it if your teacher kind of forgets or all these independent life skills that they're going to need for later on? Because just like you said, having something on an IEP is great, but if you don't know the why behind it, then you can't really, yeah, that independence part kind of falls flat a little bit.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, people ask me all the time if they should bring their children to the IEP meeting. And it's, at 14, they have to be invited. But my daughter's been going to our IEP meeting since, I want to say fourth grade, maybe
Yeah,
even third grade. But she doesn't come for the whole meeting. She doesn't stay for the whole thing, but she comes and talks about what's working for her and what's not working for her. Because as adults, yes, we could read this evaluation report and this evaluation report, and we can, oh, ADHD, these are supports that work. But as you said, all brains are individual,
yeah,
and we don't know, will this work for the child or not? Let's actually talk to the child.
yeah. And funny enough, one of my favorite things I tell my clients this all the time is I actually really like it when I suggest a strategy and the person I'm talking to says no. Like, no, that won't work for me. Right.
Right.
Because it shows that they're critically thinking about it. Right. As opposed to, yeah, 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 I'll try that. Right. Like if they go, no, that's not going to work, but X will work instead. That's that critical thinking that I really want to see. So that's great when someone says, no, that's not going to work. I'm like, great. Okay. Now we're thinking about it. And then we can have, yeah, a discussion on what would work and why.
And for some kids, I'm taking that to a different level, is that if they say no just because you're suggesting it, then it can be the conversation of like, well, why don't you think it'll work?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk through what you think, why not? Like what, and what's coming to mind is my daughter working with her physical therapist. She has a broken ankle, and of like my daughter saying, no, I can't do that. No, I can't do that. And her physical therapist says, okay, why don't you think you can? And then talking through it. And guess what? By the end of the session, she was doing it because it was talking through what is this blockage? Because maybe they're right and this won't work for them, but maybe there's something else that's stopping them from trying. And then once they talk through that, they can get to the other side,
Yeah.
basically.
For sure. For sure. Another lens on that too is, as opposed to why this is not working, you could talk about what's worked in the past, right? And sometimes talking about what's worked in the past is helpful because you have a data point to go off of. Sometimes, like, you're like, oh no, that, like a kid, oh, that won't work for me. But there's no, like, they might not know why. But if you say, okay, well, what's worked in the past, right? Now they have data to go off of, and they can hopefully use what's worked in the past to inform their current self.
Right, right. It's just so interesting how, like I've known it, but like procrastination to me, like I guess it never really connected this, the dopamine and
Mhm.
the like what we can do to get over it because it's just such a big thing.
Yeah.
of like, the old joke of like, why what was it? Now I'm blanking on what it was, but like something of like, why put it off till tomorrow if you can put it off till next week?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like one of those things. And just how, I mean, everybody procrastinates to a point and why, but looking at the why are we procrastinating
Yeah.
and figuring it out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and there's the other side, right? So we talked about obviously the side of like it's too big, I need to break it down, but there's the other side of kind of it's a task that's a little bit mundane or tedious, right? Or boring, right? And at that side, what happens is our brain actually has low dopamine because the task isn't that exciting. So what we end up doing is we end up looking for the cheap dopamine, right? We go on our phones, we go on the website, we like look at interesting because we're looking for cheap dopamine because what we're doing is boring, right? So it still comes back to dopamine, but in that case, it's about putting away your phone. It's about putting away those cheap sources of dopamine, and being very goal directed of like, this is what I want to get done, to allow your brain to know there's an end point, right? I want to get done this 1 page of math homework, right? But also putting away the distractions so that your brain doesn't flip to the cheap dopamine.
Right. Or like what I'm thinking about, like cleaning my kids' rooms. It's absolutely, and I shouldn't say cleaning, it's straightening because, they're clean. We have a maid that comes, but the straightening, there's just junk everywhere and it's the straightening. And it's like, I'll say like, okay, let's, set the timer for an hour. And my little one likes to watch while she's doing things. I'm like, watching doesn't work because you get distracted. I'm like, I'm willing to put on music.
Yep.
That's fine. We can put music so we have that to sing and dance to while we're doing it. But putting on the YouTube videos or something like that, because what winds up happening is she gets so distracted, then she gets annoyed at what we're doing. And then she's like, I don't want to do it anymore. Okay. But if I don't let her put it on and be like, okay, we're going to do a half an hour without the video, we're just going to do a half an hour of this, then we get that half an hour done. And sometimes she's like, can we keep going? And then we keep going.
And that's a great point. What you just talked about is I call it catching momentum, right? Sometimes we just need to start, and the starting is the hardest part, right? It really is, right? Whether it's going to the gym or starting cleaning your room. So I talk with clients about how do you start, right? Maybe it's setting that 30-minute timer. Maybe for some clients, it's starting with a 5-minute timer, just getting your brain going. Maybe you start with something a little bit more fun or interesting. Well, whatever it is, it's catching momentum. And once you have the momentum, you're good, but it's getting over the uncomfortableness of starting, which is the hardest part.
Right. Which is so true. It's like that one step. A friend of mine, I've been talking about writing a book for a while. Like I have the whole theme and everything. And a friend of mine actually finished writing a book, I would say probably about a year ago. And so I asked her, I was like, well, how did you do it? Like it just because the thought of writing a book, right? And she's like, I set on my calendar a half an hour every day. And that was it.
Yeah.
And at the timer, at the 30-minute mark, I stopped. And I just did 30 minutes every day.
Yeah.
And got it done.
Yeah.
Which like, I was like, oh yeah, I should probably do that.
Yeah, really, right? Because if you look at, and again, this kind of goes back to what you're talking about with the kid who wants the all the steps written out versus the kid that just needs to start, right? In that instance, it sounds like she just started, right? And she just was looking in front of her. And if you think too big, the whole book or this, your brain goes, nope, can't do it, right? So it's finding what really works for you to get you started, get you going. But yeah, I think that's a perfect example.
Right. And it worked for her because like some people are like, oh, well, why don't you just say write the first chapter or, but depending on who you are and what works for you.
Yeah.
More of a challenge.
Yeah.
So interesting. So is there are there like tests or assessments or is it just conversation? Like how do you help figure out how your brain is working?
For sure. There are tests, executive functioning measures. Those are great for certain things. For me, I feel like they don't really tell me the why or the what is going on, right? Like for kids, there are different executive functioning measures. But for me, it's more about a discussion, right? So if someone came to coaching with me, right? There's an intake session where we kind of are, talking about kind of strengths and challenges and all that, and really getting to know each other. But then after that, and in addition, it's really a discussion, right? It's, oh, okay, that's great. You tried a to-do list today, whatever it is. What worked? What didn't? Okay, what got in the way of using that to-do list? And I also try to help people get in the moment that they're going to be in when they're doing the task, right? Because it's so easy to say, oh, I'm going to do the thing when you're calm, cool, and collected.
Right.
Right? But if you're, again, writing the book is a great example. If the moment you think about it, you get anxious, oh yeah, no, that pile of laundry looks like it needs to get done, or whatever it is, right? So I try to put people in those mindsets so they can kind of predict how their brain is going to react in those moments, as opposed to when they're calm, cool, and collected. So a lot of it is just a lot of discussions, guiding questions that can help them kind of thinking about certain things, with the ultimate goal of kind of just understanding your brain and, why things work and don't work.
Right. Right. Which makes sense. And having that discussion. Yeah, it's so like, it's so amazing how the brain works, right? Like just, and figuring it out and how it's so different for each of us and every one of us.
Yeah.
And
It's also,
having that. Yeah.
yeah, it's also really, I find that people also not just appreciate it from just kind of like understanding my brain, but it normalizes things.
Right.
Right. So procrastination is normal, right? And this is what's going on neurochemically, right? And there are ways and things we can do to adjust the strategies to help, but it's not, you need to try harder. It's that the strategy you're using isn't quite fitting your brain, right? Or you didn't sleep well last night, or whatever it is, like that happens too, right? And again, kind of understanding those things, but just normalizes things. And so people don't feel as much shame about, oh, I just, have to be able to do the thing, right? You need to pick the strategies that work for you. And it's still going to be an uphill battle on some days, depending. But that way you're not fighting against the current to get things done. It's easier for you because you understand your brain.
Right. Right. Which makes sense because it's, how many times have I procrastinated because I didn't know how to do something, didn't know how to do something, didn't know how to do something. And then, stressed about it for weeks, finally did it. And I was like, oh, that wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
But it was that fear of, I don't know how to do it. What if I do it wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very, like what I've been working with my brain and things that I'm working on is like, so play that rabbit hole of what if I do it wrong? Okay, so what if I do it wrong? What happens if I do this thing wrong and I file the motion and it's wrong and the judge yells at me? Okay, so then I fix it.
Yeah.
But it still has to get, you know what I mean? Like talk through like what's the worst thing that's going to happen? And for me, like talking through of that fear of what if, and I remember working one time working with a coach, it was like if you're doing that what if of the negative, flip it around and do that what if of the positive. Like, what if I call and they say no? Okay, well, what if I call and they say yes?
Yeah, no, that's a great one. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of, to that point, right? Like, and this is a great example of putting sort of, call it putting on the lab coat, right? So like, oh, I'm procrastinating, right? As opposed to like, feeling frustrated, making a story up about why you're frustrated, letting your emotions take over. You put on the lab coat and go, oh yeah, because I'm, feeling some perfectionistic tendencies, right? Or, this task, I really hate doing this task. It's super boring. I got distracted by my phone. But trying to take the emotion out of it so you're able to find, again, look at it from a strategy viewpoint as opposed to an emotional viewpoint.
Right, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And also the, positive reinforcement, like if you do this, then you can do that,
For sure.
Like for a while, I have my treadmill in my TV room and it was, my rule was I couldn't watch TV if I didn't work out or I needed to be on the treadmill while watching TV. And it was great for a while. And then I just said, I'm just not going to watch TV anymore.
Oh, no.
So like, which is fine because I'm not sitting around watching TV. I'm being a lot more productive with other things, but it's not getting me on the treadmill.
Oh no. Have you found another strategy to get on the treadmill?
No,
Not yet.
I go through my phases. I go through my phases, and it's
Yeah.
just, like sleep, workout. Which do I want? Which do I need? And life is just busy.
That's,
But again,
that's
I go through my phases of
yeah.
like let me work out every morning. I feel so much better when I do it, and but
But
it's
it's funny.
yeah,
The strategy you're actually talking about is called temptation bundling. It's a strategy that it was coined by a behavioral economist. I feel like. Anyway, but it's so interesting. I love talking to people because a lot of the times, again, they're using strategies in their daily lives that are science backed. And it's just about figuring out, and just either labeling it for people, but it's really validating that, like, oh yeah, no, I know what I'm supposed to be doing and I know how to do it. It's just sort of putting a label to it and making it more cognizant for yourself. Also, using it in different contexts if you need to, right? So maybe it's not with treadmill, but maybe it's every time I'm only allowed to have that cup of coffee when I work on my book or whatever it is.
right.
Right? But you're using the same ideas in just different contexts of your life.
Yeah, which makes sense. It's pairing it up. Like if I want to have ice cream, then I do need to work out that day,
Yeah.
like or things like that. I just need to be better about like setting the rules and actually following the rules I set for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's always a challenge, and it's always a challenge to hold ourselves accountable.
Right.
Right. Another big strategy that people use that I talk about all the time is the idea of using like a body double, which is basically like co-working, right? Like you're
Yep.
working and somebody else is working, and accountability partners, right? Which is like you tell somebody, like your husband, hey, I'm going to do X thing, please remind me, please ask me about it tonight. Because it just hits different when there's somebody
Yeah.
else either there or you have an accountability, which is actually why I actually just started it last week. I started a part of a group called Productivity Power Hour, where it's actually a body doubling group for my clients to come, right? And they all kind of get work done. There's some reflection about what's worked and what hasn't, but I built that group for that need, for people that I know that it helps to get things done, is to have other people there.
Yeah. And that's, some attorney friends that before COVID, I had, a couple of different groups that we would do it like once a month. We would get together and like literally we would do it in person then. And we would, bring snacks and we'd all be in the office and literally working on our business together separately on our own thing, but be there for like, hey, I'm struggling with doing my email. What do you guys do? How do you guys organize it? It's like, oh, wow, I never thought of that. And
Yeah.
it was just so great because who wants to sit there on a Saturday afternoon for 4 hours and work? But if I got 4 of my attorney friends sitting there with me and we're still telling jokes and working together,
It really,
yeah.
really helps. It's amazing.
Now we're trying to do it virtually, which isn't quite the same, but it's still, we're all on Zoom. We all have more than one screen and, it's that accountability of, making it more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No, I've talked to some clients because I just started it last week and I got some feedback, and yeah, it's, oh, I should be working because if somebody looks up at my screen, I'm on my phone, right? Like I don't want that to happen. Right. And it's the power. It's really powerful to have that. And yeah, set it, either setting it up with an already established group, or in your case, right, with some friends, but just knowing that helps. And that's a step I need to take to be able to get my work done, as opposed to, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll try harder next time. Or that, that just doesn't work.
Well, and it's like, bringing up like organizing. Like I remember, oh, I love going to my friend's house and helping them organize. I don't want to do my own house.
Yeah.
But so it's kind of like, well, let's do it. You come to my house and help me do mine, and then we'll go to your house and help you do yours. Because it's more fun helping somebody else than going through your own stuff.
Yeah,
Right.
no, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of that, have you, so there's another term called gamification,
Okay.
which is basically making something fun, right? making following a to-do list fun or following this fun. There's one app I'm going to call out and recommend. I'm not sure if you've heard of the Finch app.
No.
Yep, it's called Finch.
Okay.
And you basically take care of a little pet bird.
Okay.
When it's basically a to-do list, right? And every time you check off something on your to-do list, like your bird gets points and you get a certain number of points, you get to go on an adventure, or you get gems, right? You get to buy your bird little outfits or stuff for their house. And it's funny, but it basically turns doing your to-do list into a video game, right?
Wow.
And I mean, I've recommended to a ton of my clients. There's different gamification apps out there, but this is one of my favorites. I'm terrible at drinking water. And let me tell you, I want to drink my water to get my bird to go on an adventure. It sounds silly, but it really works. So there's other examples of gamification are, people that put little stones in a jar or things to make it fun. But anyway, I wanted to make a shout out. This app is really, really good, especially for, anybody, but it's also kid friendly, which is really nice.
I was just going to say, I think for my 12-year-old, this would be amazing because she loves things like that. And then, it'll be, so I'm assuming you set it up of you do certain things.
Yeah.
Time frame.
Yeah. So, it's made for it's actually built for self-care. So when you set it up, it kind of tells you some goals you can do. I just edit the goals, right? I have my own goals. It's really easy to edit. But yeah, so it's not a habit tracking app, which I like. It's not okay, you're on this streak. The streak is just logging into the app, right? Then you get 5 points for, drinking water, or 5 points for getting your homework done, or whatever it is. And the more points you get, again, you get gems to buy your bird something, or your bird goes on an adventure. So it's really nice because it's not, again, a habit streak that you're once I lose it, I'm done. Each day is a new day, and you can get more or less points depending on what you did that day. And it's just fun. It's a really,
oh my God, I love it. I'm so excited to go find it and see, get it set up for both my kids, because that's one of our challenges around our house is getting the kids to do chores. And, it's sometimes easier for us to just do it than yell at them to do it, which is not good habits for any of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And then if it's working for them, again, it kind of brings up a conversation of, oh my gosh, this is working for you. What is it? Oh, it's really fun to give to help my bird get this outfit, right? This outfit's 900 gems. I have 400, whatever. But it hits on that dopamine, right? And if it works, like I said, it's been really working for me on water, which is, it's funny because it's a little bird, but I want to take care of my bird.
It might be what I need to get on the treadmill again.
Exactly. But yeah, it's really cool. It's called gamification in general. It's just basically making a to-do list or boring things more fun, right?
Okay.
And that's one of them. Is that app is one I highly recommend to mostly everybody.
Awesome. And we'll definitely have the link down there for people to be oh, wait, I need to try that too.
Yeah.
So for our listeners that are oh, she's awesome, I want to talk to her. What is the process? How would people engage with you?
Absolutely. So they can go to my website. It's AEO Coaching OT.com. And they can book a free 30-minute consult. Right.
Awesome.
And then from there, we have a free 30-minute consult, and, we just talk, right? Is this a good fit? What are you looking for? The other service I offer, like I said, is the Productivity Power Hour, which is basically 60 minutes. And it's basically designed to get those sticky tasks done. So coaching is helpful if you really want some individualized understanding of your brain and what's working and what's not. And the Productivity Power Hour is a little bit better if you're just hey, I really have to make progress on X. I know that body doubling helps me. I just need to, and it's less about the individualized support and more just about community support. So I have that as well. And that's the same thing, right? You can go on my website. I think that will automatically direct you to just send me an email. But that you can just kind of sign up for. But the individual coaching, I like to have a 30-minute consult to make sure that we're on the same page on,
Right.
If the service would be helpful for somebody.
And if you're a good fit, because not everybody gets along, right?
Yeah.
This has been so awesome. Amy, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all of your words of wisdom with our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Of course. And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Stress Free IEP. We hope today's conversation gave you new tools, insights, or just a little more peace of mind as you support your neurodivergent child. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone in your village. Next week, we're going to have episode 150, where Lisa Zederman will talk about custody conflict, IEPs, and child delays. You can always learn more and connect with me at schefterlaw.com or follow along on social media. Until next time, remember, you do not have to do it all alone.